There are two concepts from the medieval period which are really important to understanding not only Arthurian romance, but a lot of the texts that circulate throughout the Middle English period. And these two concepts are called chivalry and courtly love. And they are both related to this feudal system that came over that you heard about in the earlier lesson. And they're both important for the chronicle or for the romance tradition. So if you watched Terry Jones's video on the Knight, you will have learned that chivalry, the term chivalry, derives from the French word chevalier, which means a mounted knight. In Old English, the term for a mounted knight, a knight on a horse, was knecht, which is where our current term comes from, knight. Knecht turns into knight. Basically, what knecht meant was a nobleman rich enough to afford a horse and armor. A horse was extraordinarily expensive. So was armor. So when I ask students what chivalry is, they often reply with answers like, oh, it's like opening the door for a lady, or paying for your girl's dinner, or putting your cloak across a puddle so your love doesn't step in it, and things like that.
Wait, stop right there. No, that is not chivalry, not what chivalry is.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying.
It has nothing to do with putting a robe down on a puddle or opening a door. No. Chivalry is about how men treat other men.
Actually, yes, exactly. That's actually right. Chivalry is a code of behavior that dictates male-male relationships, how men behave with each other.
Yes, exactly.
And only specifically aristocratic men, as you heard Terry Jones talk about. It also dictates how you should treat a woman that you're not romantically interested in. But chivalry is not about love. That is not what it's about at all.
What you're thinking of is called courtly love. The love of a beautiful lady, such as I.
So chivalry came to involve contracts governing the relationships between people of the same class. So male-male relationships and male-female non-romantic relationships. And chivalry mimics the feudal relationship of lord and vassal, where a hierarchy applies. So your lord is who you owe your chivalric loyalty to. And so it's directly connected to that feudal system.
All those knights are always worried about their chivalry. Are they being true to their god? Are they being true to their lord? Are they being true to their word?
Exactly. That's totally right.
Has nothing to do with women at all.
So I'm going to share my screen for just a minute and show you an oath of chivalry that dates from a little bit later than we're talking about right now, but from the 15th century. All right, so here you have, as I mentioned, a chivalric oath from the 15th century. So the very first thing, as Milady correctly pointed out, is that you should love God. That's the very first thing. Above all, be faithful and sustain the church. So your very first loyalty in the chivalric system is to the Christian God. Then the next thing that you're supposed to be loyal to is your sovereign lord. So this is, like I said, the lord and vassal relationship and the lord and knight relationship. So your sovereign lord might be the king, or it might be your lord, whoever you're directly connected to. This could cause trouble sometimes. What if your king and your lord are in a fight? Then who do you owe your loyalty to? Well, probably your immediate lord, but it gets tricky. So the third one is be true to your word. God first, then your lord, then your word. Got to be true to all those things. Then the fourth thing is to sustain and succor widows and maidens. So that's to help them, to be compassionate to them, to provide them what they need. Notice that it's widows and maidens. So these are people without male attachments. A widow is someone whose husband has passed. A maiden in the medieval parlance is a non-married woman, a person who in theory is still a virgin because they haven't been married yet. A maiden, a young girl. So you need to help them out because they don't have men around to help them. Notice that has nothing to do with like your lady, right? Widows and maidens specifically aren't your lady. They're not your wife or your lady or your loved one. All right, so then the fifth thing is to remain nowhere where wrongful judgment is made. So this suggests that they're not supposed to stand for inequities and crimes, things that are bad. Wrongful judgment also where someone has wrongly declared something. All right, so the final one is kind of the one that causes, I guess, the trouble, maybe. So it says, suffer no murderers or extortioners of the king's people within your country, but take it upon yourself to make sure they receive justice and are punished by the king's law. So this is where essentially they're being authorized in a sense to become their own private militia, which is a problem. You saw in the Terry Jones video discussing the idea that there were all these guys around that had been trained in weaponry and had weaponry and had lots of physical power, and it was very hard to control them, especially if they had an example of something like this where it said you can take it upon yourself to make sure justice is served. So you can see it to a certain extent how some of the atrocities that Jones describes in his video came to pass. And you can also see the way that these ideas are very closely related to the feudal hierarchy. God is over everyone, then the lords, then the knights, and then women are at the bottom to be protected. Oh, yeah, okay. So courtly love is a little bit different than chivalry. Courtly love
Courtly
is.
love. Ugh. When
I'm gonna let her tell you.
they sing songs to you and they write poetry for you and they give you beautiful gifts.
Yep.
And they give you love tokens and
yeah.
they tell you how much they love you, even though you're married to someone else. This is courtly love, dear.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm not surprised you understand the difference so well. In fact, some people have argued that courtly love was kind of a game that aristocrats played with each other. Others have argued that it was more like a real tradition. I think that whole question, was it real or not, kind of misses the point. Representation, literature, films, television, songs, music, all of the ways that we represent things. Representation always impacts reality. So even if something wasn't necessarily happening in a widespread way before we represent it, often once we represent it, it starts to become widespread in a common way. It becomes part of the culture after that. So representation does reflect reality, but it also helps to create reality. It's reciprocal relationship. So I think the people that are asking, was courtly love real, are kind of missing the point. Even if it was a literary tradition, once it's out in the world and people start to practice it as part of their lives and refer to it through that literary tradition, it does become part of reality. If chivalry was a code of behavior governing male-male relationships, courtly love is the corollary code of behavior that governs male-female romantic relationships, so heterosexual romantic relationships. And in this version of courtly love, the beloved, the woman, assumes the role of the feudal lord over the lover, the man. So the lover treats the beloved as though they were the lord or master of him. So it actually inverts the actual position of women in the feudal hierarchy, which is to be relatively powerless in the Norman world. And so to have her become then all powerful over her lover is to switch her position of powerlessness under the Norman law into a position of power. But of course, it's the knight who really has the power because he decides whether or not he actually participates in this. But what the idea is that once you're in love, love dictates for you. And just like Milady said, it involved conventional expressions of love, like exchanging tokens and vows, sending letters, doing good deeds in honor of or bad deeds in honor of one's beloved. And I want to show you an example of someone who writes about courtly love. His name is Andreas Capellanus, and he wrote a piece that's usually translated in English as The Art of Courtly Love. And it defines some of the ideas of the time period regarding courtly love, or shows, it provides a good example of those ideas for you. And this is posted on the Cougar Courses page for this week, along with the chivalric oath, in case you're interested. But I did want to just show it to you here. So you can see Andreas Capellanus. He is writing in his 12th century, the same century that all of the texts that we were just talking about, Marie de France comes from, and Geoffrey of Monmouth, Was, and Layman, all of those come from the 12th century. If we take a look at what Andreas Capellanus is telling us here, he says, what is love? Love is an inborn suffering. So already love is suffering, right off the bat. Proceeding from the sight and immoderate thought upon the beauty of the other sex. So first off, it's heterosexual. They designate that pretty clearly right there. And it stems from the sight. You see someone and fall in love with them. So this is an extraordinarily superficial view of love in a sense, because it stems specifically from physical beauty. And then once you see them, then you start to think about them immoderately. So all the time, right? And maybe in naughty ways. It proceeds from the sight and immoderate thought upon the beauty of the other sex, specifically the beauty. You obsess with how gorgeous they are. Sounds like Instagram. For which cause, above all other things, one wishes to embrace the other, and by common assent in this embrace to fulfill the commandments of love. So at least they've got consent in there, common assent. But you want to get it on with them. You look at them and you think they are mad hot, and you want to do them. That is courtly love. Now, some people debate whether or not people actually acted on it, but let's take a look at some of the rules of love according to Andreas. Marriage is no excuse for not loving. So courtly love was an adulterous love, typically. If you are married in an arranged situation because you are an aristocratic woman and you have to be married to someone in order to cement ties or treaties or whatever it is, you may not find love in your marriage. So you seek it outside your marriage. And this is what courtly love was often about. So marriage is no excuse for not loving. You can always find a love outside of marriage. He who is not jealous cannot love.
Oh, the more jealousy is, the happier I am.
So this is kind of an interesting view of love. It was one that maybe contemporary psychologists would not endorse. Jealousy makes you in love or proves your love, right? No one can be bound by two loves. So you can only love one person, not two. Love is always growing or diminishing. So love can't just be steady through. You're either falling more in love or you're falling out of love. Now, this is an interesting one, number 6. A male cannot love until he's reached puberty, which to me suggests that they see love as a physiological reaction in the body. Because if he can't love until he's reached puberty, then presumably he needs to be sexually mature in order to experience this kind of love, which suggests that it is a very carnal kind of love. It is not proper to love one whom one would be ashamed to marry. So your lover needs to be noble. The true lover never desires the embrace of any save his lover. So if you really love someone, that's the only one you want to be with. So there's no cheating because the only one you want to be with is your lover. Love rarely lasts when it is revealed. Number 13. So secret love. This is part of the adulterous nature. An easy attainment makes love contemptible. A difficult one makes it more dear. So this is the 12th century version of what we would now call playing hard to get. So if I attain my love easily, then I'm like, ugh. But if it's hard, I'm like, oh, it's very dear. Number 15, every lover turns pale in the presence of his beloved. So love institutes a visceral reaction in your body. When a lover suddenly has sight of his beloved, his heart beats wildly. Again, this reaction in the body. 17, a new love expels an old one. This goes back to you can't have two loves. 19, if love diminishes, it quickly leaves and rarely revives. So once you start losing love, you better watch out because it's going to be gone. 20, a lover is always fearful, presumably that his love is going to go away or leave him or not love him. Notice the man as the active lover and the woman as the recipient of the love in this setup. And notice that it's a man and a woman. All right, so 21, true jealousy always increases the effects of love. Again, with this jealousy shows us love. So 22, if a lover suspects another, jealousy and the effects of love increase. So if you can, have another guy interested in you, then your lover's going to be like, oh, I love you even more. Now, 23 is important because it tells us about something called love sickness. He who is vexed by the thoughts of love eats little and seldom sleeps. So there's this idea in medieval courtly love that if you're in love with someone and you don't get to be around them, that you're going to be physically ill. You're going to be sick. You can't sleep. You're all upset all the time. You're wandering around. Love sickness. This comes from courtly love. Just a few more. We got 24. Every action of a lover ends in the thought of his beloved. So they're always thinking of their beloved. 25. The true lover believes only that which he thinks will please his beloved. So if you love someone, you believe their beliefs even. You only believe things and think things that they would love. Love can deny nothing to love. So this is where if your lover says, fight that battle, then you do it. Or if your lover says, bring me a peach, then you go find a peach. You can deny nothing to your love. 27, a lover can never have enough of the embraces of his beloved. Back to this physicality, this carnality. 28, the slightest suspicion incites the lover to suspect the worst of his beloved. See, to me, that doesn't sound so much like love, but okay. if the slightest thing I do and you're not going to trust me, oh boy. Yeah. Courtly love. The true lover is continually obsessed with the image of his beloved. So again, we notice these themes: beauty, physical reaction, visceral response in the lover. Love needs to be secret. Love needs to be full of jealousy. Love is always growing, and the lover can't deny anything to their beloved. Sounds super duper healthy. Okay, one final thing. So we have chivalry and we have courtly love. And as you might imagine, these things sometimes come into conflict with one another. What happens if your lord wants you to do one thing and your lady wants you to do something else? Or what happens, as is the case with King Arthur, and Guinevere and Lancelot, what happens when your beloved is your king's wife? And this is the most common formation of courtly love, is to have a powerful king who has a wife, and the king's best knight falls in love with that wife. So this is what we see in King Arthur with Lancelot and Guinevere, and we also see it in the story of Tristan and Isolde with King Mark, which is also an Arthurian story. So in the Arthurian tradition, you'll see a lot of this tension of like, how do you choose between your lady and your lord? And this is something I'm going to ask you to look out for, in particular in Marie's Lays, which you're reading for this week. So Marie is a Anglo-Norman writer. She's someone who is from France but is living and writing in England, and is writing in Norman French. And she's writing stories that she calls lays, and they are little teeny short romances, essentially. And she claims to be translating them from Celtic sources, so Breton sources, which are the Celts that went to the north of France during all of the various invasions in the Old English period. She's a good example of these Arthurian stories. She's unusual because she's a woman writer, which we don't see a lot of in the medieval period. And that's one of the reasons I try to focus on her, to show you some alternative voices instead of just the voices of the male clerics that we mostly saw in the earlier period. Medieval literature was dominated by male writers, but I've tried to sneak in a few female writers just to give you a sense of some of the alternative voices that were happening during this time. And I hope that you'll enjoy Marie's Lays. I find them quite enjoyable. All right, so take a look for courtly love and chivalry, and make sure to tell your friends when they're talking about how they're being so chivalrous. When people say chivalry is dead, no, they're talking about courtly love. Courtly love is dead. Chivalry is more akin to what people practice, like if they're talking about good sportsmanship and things like that. That's more on the line of chivalry, or like bro code, bros. That's chivalry more. Courtly love is this whole romantic thing that we think of today. All right. Well, I hope you have fun talking about some of these texts, and I look forward to seeing you in class soon. Bye-bye.